It happened to me.
Now, there are a few facts he dropped in that speech that are important. You heard him say that he was a commander in the IDF. He volunteered. He was injured, as we discussed earlier. And another interesting thing he mentioned is that he's proud of every action he took while at the IDF. He didn't really go into detail about what those actions were, but I actually got the chance to ask him about them later on when we were debating here in the United States. But before we get into that, though, I need to set the table a little bit more, because at this debate on Sean Kelly's Digital Social Hour, this guy had already spent pretty much 3 hours debating other people before he got to me. I think there were about 10 other people who debated him. I was one of the last. I was supposed to be the last, but somebody else ended up going up after me. And needless to say, for 3 hours, this man was basically screaming at everybody he spoke to. He wasn't speaking cordially. He wasn't speaking with any level of civility. He was screaming at the people across from him, badgering them, verbally abusing them. And I want to be specific about what I mean here, because I'm not speaking hyperbolically. Under criminal law, verbal conduct can potentially fall under several categories depending on the circumstances: assault by threat, terroristic or criminal threats, harassment, disorderly conduct, or breach of the peace. I'm not saying he was doing the first two. What I'm talking about is the harassment, verbal abuse, and disorderly conduct. The way he was directing this behavior at the people debating him was just extraordinary to witness. The level of disrespect is something I have never witnessed myself firsthand until I saw this man talking to my fellow Americans about why we should support Israel unconditionally. In fact, one of the topics that kept coming up was whether the IDF is justified in bombing schools. And across the board, whenever somebody challenged him on this, he verbally abused them in a way that was relatively unsettling. He called them Nazis. He cursed them out. At certain points, he refused to even look people in the face and would only address the host of the show, who was sitting off to the side. He would scream and curse at people sitting in the background. Overall, it was an extremely toxic and abusive environment. He would very often engage in what I'm describing as fighting words, inherently inflammatory statements likely to provoke an immediate violent reaction from the average person hearing them. He was name-calling and directly provoking people. He would do this to men who were much bigger than him. In fact, right before me, he debated a Green Beret. Not only did he call the Green Beret a Nazi, he verbally abused them in several other ways. And look, if we're talking about civil law, there's also the concept of intentional infliction of emotional distress involving extreme and outrageous conduct, intentionally or recklessly causing severe emotional distress. Now, I'm not saying that's what I personally experienced. I'm telling you what the atmosphere was like for those 3 hours. People were dealing with extreme, outrageous verbal conduct, and they were flabbergasted by it. It got to the point where most people refused to shake his hand at the end of their debates. Eventually, people were refusing to shake his hand before they even sat down because they had already watched his conduct and seen how outrageous he was acting. And again, keep in mind how he was screaming during that Oxford talk. Remember people shouting shame and him responding with something to the effect of, "I love that shame." That was essentially his conduct the entire time he was debating these folks at this podcast. Now, as I mentioned, I was one of the last people to debate him, and I actually shook his hand. He was surprised by that. He even took note of it and says something like, "Wow, finally, somebody who's cordial." And I'm like, "Yeah, fine, whatever." So I sit down and he lays out his claim that Israel was not built on stolen Palestinian land. I ask him to explain why he believes that, and he immediately deflects into a red herring, saying he doesn't have to explain it, and that, in fact, I should define what a Palestinian is. Folks, I've been debating for a minute. I am going to stick to the claim. I want to understand why you believe your claim. I want to understand your thought process. I'm not going to get diverted into all these side trails about defining what a Palestinian is when you haven't even explained your claim. I even invited him, Yosef, to give me a definition of Palestinian, and he didn't want to talk. He just wanted to berate me. And that's literally what happened for the first few minutes. I kept trying to hold him to his claim, and he kept berating me. At one point, he got upset and started talking to the host almost exclusively. And I'm like, okay, well, just focus on me, buddy. We're the ones debating. Then he starts berating the son of Palestinian refugees who was sitting directly behind me. And that goes on for several minutes. The son of the Palestinian refugees eventually provides a definition of Palestinians, but that doesn't seem to calm this guy down. He then diverts into fighting words. And I'm sitting there just thinking, like, are you serious? He's basically saying, yeah, this guy is a pussy. He's not going to do anything. He's a Palestinian, and starts calling me a Palestinian for whatever reason. Folks, I'm an American citizen. I don't think I have to explain that to you. And I have every right to be skeptical about how my government is using our money to fund these sorts of operations abroad because I don't want America involved in an endless foreign conflict. That's my position. You guys already know this. I'm an anti-interventionist. Anyway, at one point in the debate, I get sick of going around in circles with this guy and having him scream at me and other people in the studio. So I heard him mention earlier at another debate that he was an IDF soldier. So I asked him, how many people did you kill in the IDF? And he retreats a little bit. I guess the question caught him off guard because he says, I never killed anybody. And I'm like, okay, well, you were in the Israeli military and you didn't kill anybody? How's that possible? What role did you have in the military? He then tells me, well, I was a commander. And I say, okay, as a commander, you didn't kill anybody? How is that possible? And he says, well, not directly. And I'm like, oh, okay, so you did kill people. Did you give orders to kill people? And if I remember this accurately, he said yes, or something to that effect. So then I start going down this line of questioning about how far these strikes that he commanded went. And he's tacitly confirming these things. He never directly says, no, I never did that. In fact, a lot of the times, he would just look down, pause for a second, and then try to deflect. Finally, I asked him whether he had ordered a strike on a school. Again, he puts his head down, avoids answering, and deflects. And at that moment, I'm like, in my head, oh man, this guy definitely ordered a bomb on a school. So I start laying into him, and he gets pissed off. And that escalates the language he was using even further, because now he's not just using what I would describe as fighting words. Now he has an emotional reason to push it even further. He's pissed off, and that's when things escalate to the next level. At which point I'm like, okay, bet. I get up, take off my jacket, walk over, and put my arm around his shoulder. And from there, things went off the rails. Now, I'm going to show you the supercut that was posted.
All right, I'm going to pause this real quick. Yeah, that's incorrect. He should not do that, right? I'm kind of a bigger guy, so I could never do that. Because if I do that, people are going to say I'm bullying somebody or whatever. And that's kind of what this is going to look like, I'm thinking, the way he's describing it. You just got to maintain your composure. And I understand the problem here, because that is a difficult thing to do when someone's talking about killing children. Like, I can understand the anger and how you just want to choke them, but you just got to be a man, and you got to just suck that up. Picture them as women. You know how bad you want to choke women and you can't? That's what you got to do. You just got to treat them like women. Best advice I can give you.
By his wife, Emily Schrader, the well-known Israeli propagandist. This was recorded on her phone while she was sitting off to the side. So you'll see me get up and take off my jacket, but understand that this is a cut. There's a lot of context missing. I'm not going to share Sean Kelly's full video because it's Sean Kelly's video, but I'll add the relevant context wherever it's missing. Sean has the entire podcast recorded, and my friends were also recording from the side. So I have the majority of the interaction recorded uncut if it ever needs to be presented. But for now, I'm actually going to use the videos Yosef has been sharing on his own social media because I'd rather address their narrative as they're presenting it. He and his little minions have been making these supercuts and, in my view, misrepresenting what actually happened. So we're going to go through their own material and address it as we go. Anyway, Yosef shared this roughly 2-minute video filmed by his wife on his social media. This is what it shows.
Let's do it right now. Let's solve this.
There's no fighting, guys. There's no fighting.
Let's solve this. Can we solve it?
Sit down, please.
Let's do it. This genocidal asshole is just sitting here monologuing for 4.5 hours.
You understand? They can't actually do something about it. But if you actually can
See,
do shit,
fighting words. You do something about
I'm right
it.
next to you. I'm right next to you.
That's the thing. He
I am
can't
right
touch
next
me.
to you.
He can't do shit.
I can do whatever the hell I want.
He can't do shit.
Here. What's going on? How you doing?
Guys.
Yeah, you see, my rule is you have to touch me first. Once you touch me, the chaos starts. But I'm not going to touch nobody first. So Def Noodles should not have touched him here. I'm going to say that, go out on a limb here and say that is frowned upon in a debate to be touching your opponent. You should never do that. Never.
Guys, seriously, no, let's not be.
He's like a foot shorter than me. You're a fucking bitch. You're a fucking bitch. You kill children. You fuck up. You genocidal fucking freak. You genocidal fucking freak. Shut the fuck up.
You can't do shit, my brother.
See, you can't grab him.
Stop it.
You wanna play?
Hey.
You can't do shit, my brother.
Please go. You're gonna.
his hands was wrong.
He wants shit, I'll do shit.
His stuff in his hands was wrong.
So when someone
You need a big man to do your work, you fucking loser. The same way you bomb kids, you fucking loser.
Rock, that's your husband? That's your husband?
I can't do shit. You need two people to hold me back, you fucking loser.
I'm not doing shit.
You bombed kids, and you need two people to hold me back. Be a man.
I ain't trying to fight you, idiot.
Stop, come on. That's your husband, right? Stop. That's your husband. That's it. Look at this guy. If he hits me. Dude, stop. Hey.
Josh is here.
Listen, you saw almost stop. Stop.
He attacked me.
Stop. You just suck him down.
He didn't attack me.
Stop, brother. Stop.
You want more? You want fucking more?
Violent Israelis don't know how to do anything but fight and cause damage. If it's a violent Israeli, all they do is attack.
Now, we're going to get into my conduct in a second because I want to talk at length about my thoughts on this entire situation. But there's one thing I want to point out that Pally_Lebo was able to capture in this video. As you can see here, Yosef walks over to the planter, grabs rocks, puts them between his fingers, apparently so he could use them as some kind of makeshift brass knuckles when he hit me, which is not only cowardly, but potentially very significant when you're talking about who is preparing to use force and how. And then, as you can see, when I'm pinned down by...
I agree with Def Noodles on almost everything he's saying, but what he did was wrong. You can't grab that dude first. You got to instigate him into touching you first. That's the trick. Like, you can't just grab him first, because now, yeah, all this scumbag shit that he's doing, yeah, he is doing that, but you grabbed him. So now it's kind of... Once you do the scumbag thing first and grab him, he gets to be scumbag too. You can't be the instigator. You got to be the one who retaliates. That's how you don't go to jail. Because I think he's probably going to go to jail, or may have already. I don't know. But yeah, you can't just grab people in a debate. That's very, very bad.
two people, that's when he actually engages and punches me in the stomach. I'm literally being held down by two people, and that's when this guy decides to come over and punch me. Now, as far as what happened inside the...
Yeah, 100%. Guy's a scumbag, but you can't touch him first. You're giving him the ability to be a scumbag. Make him touch you first. That's my only advice in this. Don't touch them. Got to make them touch you first.
Studio, there's obviously going to become a question of who did what and when. I grabbed his hand. He's the one who pulls me in and tries to slam my head on the table. Then he goes...
See, you don't need to take your jacket off. He's 4'2". You could beat him up with your jacket on, dude. Just keep it on. Like, you don't need all that. Just get him to touch you. That's the fucking main ingredient.
To throw a punch and holds it back. I have my own opinion about what happened, and obviously I was walking a very fine line in that situation, but people are going to watch the footage and interpret it differently. The internet is already extremely divided over who instigated this and who didn't. I believe he was instigating based on everything that happened beforehand. I believe this was the outcome he wanted because, as we've seen, this is the kind of stuff he does. He's a rage baiter. He's a provocateur. He goes around the world instigating confrontations and then paints himself as a victim afterwards. That's his whole shtick. And ironically, that's exactly the narrative that the Nick Mataus and the E.L. Jacob...
Oh, appreciate that, Josh. Don't super chat because it doesn't go to me. I don't even have it set up. It just goes straight to YouTube. I haven't been able to get my monetization straightened out either. I need to do that when we get off the stream. So don't. I apologize. I usually do that a little thing in the beginning and tell everybody do not super chat and don't join a membership because it just all goes to YouTube till I get my tax stuff straightened out with them. So my bad. But if you're in the lobby, let me know. I'm not seeing you in the lobby yet, so I'm gonna bring you up as soon as this video is over. If you're ready.
Of the world, the propagandists, the paid Israeli propagandists, immediately started running with. At no point did I claim to be the victim. In fact, I'm bigger than this guy. Objectively, I could break him in half if he didn't have his security guard there. Which, by the way, he did. He had an entire IDF security detail, and inside the studio, he had 3 people stopping me. Outside, there were 2 people holding me down while this guy punched me in the stomach. And by the way, the punch felt like a flick.
And I frown upon all that too. But like I said, if you touch somebody, sometimes some bad shit like that happens, especially if you ain't got nobody else with you. You might end up getting jumped when you touch people. That's just the way of the world. You can't be running around grabbing people in debates.
It was actually pretty comical. I barely even felt it. I saw him get up afterward and basically thought, wait, did this guy just try to punch me? So all of that makes it pretty pathetic, but not particularly surprising that the very next day, he posts this on X. He says, I filed a police report against my attacker. He will soon be arrested, and I hope he's prosecuted here in the United States. People like him have one place behind bars. Okay, give it a shot, buddy. I think you're wasting the resources of Las Vegas police because under Nevada law, assault includes unlawfully attempting to use physical force against somebody or intentionally putting somebody in reasonable apprehension of immediate bodily harm. While
Right, but once you touched him, you gave him the battery. Like you've touched him. It's not just assault, it's battery because you've made contact with someone who didn't want you making contact with them. So he's kind of got you dead to rights on a battery charge.
battery is the willful and unlawful use of force or violence against another person. So this isn't as simple as him declaring himself the victim and therefore everybody else accepting his version of events. The actual sequence matters. Who initiated what conduct, what each person reasonably perceived, what force was used in response, and whether any subsequent force was defensive or retaliatory. There's video of this interaction, including him pulling me toward the table, appearing to start throwing a punch, and later punching me while I'm being restrained. So police actually look at all of this. They're going to have to evaluate the entire encounter, not a 2-minute propaganda edit, and not Yosef declaring himself on X so that the Ziobots can support him. And I think that's what this is really about. He's trying to use this for attention and paint himself as a victim. You have to remember, folks, this guy's a provocateur. He's a rage baiter. He goes all around the world doing this. We saw him at Tel Aviv. We saw him in New York City. We saw him at Oxford. Now we see him in Las Vegas, constantly agitating people because this is how he makes money. This is the part of the whole divide and conquer Israeli propaganda thing. It's unfortunate. This guy is a little pipsqueak, and honestly, he's one of the most disgusting people I have ever met. And look, here's my assessment of the situation. In my opinion, this guy is a war monster. He is a monster. Based on the conversation I had with him and everything I heard him say that day on the podcast, I believe he's a war criminal who is now being used for Israeli propaganda. He should be behind bars. And looking back on my interaction with him, it genuinely felt like looking into the face of evil because, in my view, this man is a monster. When I asked whether he ordered strikes on schools, he put his head down, avoided answering, and deflected. I
agree. Dude is a monster. It's absolutely true. But you can't play into their hands. Like you can't touch him and give him what Shmuley and all these guys are dying for. You can't do that. You have to contain yourself and make them touch you.
interpreted that as a tacit admission. And then you go back to what he himself said at Oxford. He said, "I do not regret a single thing I did for the IDF." To me, you don't make a statement like that unless there are things you know most people would regret doing in service of a military and would most likely question you doing. And by the way, we've seen numerous controversies involving the IDF over the last few years. We've seen people at the Knesset arguing over the treatment of alleged sexual abuse of Palestinian prisoners. We've seen Ben Gvir, who, by the way, shared this story, Yosef's story, on Twitter and called him a king. And, the same Ben Gvir who just a couple of months ago was calling for the full extermination and genocide of Lebanon. So this is what we're dealing with here, folks. In my view, this guy is a propaganda agent. And unfortunately, I fell for the bait. This really isn't my proudest moment. I'm really not.
All right. I'm happy with this. Like that was what I was looking for. I wanted him to admit he fell for the bait and kind of come clean with the little mea culpa. And that's what I was looking for because I agree with him almost everything he said. And that was my big issue is the touching. Don't touch them. Don't give them what they want because they are dying for that. Shmuley and him probably had a party that evening. So I was really happy to hear him say that. I didn't watch this all the way through.
Not that proud of it. Honestly, I'm embarrassed that it devolved into that. In a situation like this, cooler heads have to prevail, and I fell for the rage bait. I should hold myself to a higher standard because I love this country. I'm passionate about our people. I'm passionate about Americans and protecting Americans. And as a Catholic, I believe in the universal dignity of human life. I believe every human being has dignity. So to sit across from somebody I viewed as so
maybe not on OnlyFans.
vile, listening to him just justify the killing of children, and then hearing what I interpreted as tacit admissions about his participation in military strikes, all of that affected me. Driving back to LA afterward, I thought to myself, man, if I had been face to face with one of the Nazis convicted in Nuremberg, what would I have done? Obviously, that's a hypothetical moral question, but in that moment, I felt like I was looking into the face of sheer evil. I felt like this man had done great evil and that he was continuing to do evil by traveling around the world sowing division of this sort. I believe this man is truly profoundly evil. He's a monster. But all that being said, I've had several...
To be fair, there's a whole army full of them in another country right now. So you would get really tired if you're going to go fight each one of them. You got to just understand they're evil people in the world and get them to touch you.
conversations with friends since then, and we're all Christians. And one thing we discussed was turning the other cheek. Was it really for me in that moment to take the action I took? And in the moment,
If you see me turning the other cheek, I'm going to be coming around with a backhand. So just stay tuned.
I felt justified. I did. But looking back on it, after all the emotions cooled, I don't think I did myself or anybody else any favors by engaging physically the way that I did. Verbally, I think I could have been more effective too, but the more egregious mistake was allowing it to become physical. I should have turned the other cheek. I should have allowed vengeance to belong to God, because ultimately vengeance is his. Instead, I fell for the bait and I allowed myself to become part of this divisive propaganda this troll's running around and showing. And that's one of the things that pisses me off the most. Now I'm fodder for the exact divisive rhetoric being spun by this deeply demonic individual. He calls himself a Christian, but I saw absolutely nothing Christian about the way he treated everybody in that room. And look, guys, if you've been following me for a while, you know I don't take the fight home. I go in, I match people's energy, and I lock in. And once I'm locked in, it's in God's hands. I've been praying for God to give me guidance and clarity about what my mission was in this and whether I actually saw through his purpose. And in my heart, I know I probably could have been more effective for God if I had shown more restraint. And if I had simply allowed Yosef to expose himself through his own behavior. But I guess this is where
God wants you to get him to touch you first so you can knock his teeth out and not go to jail. That's what God wants.
our culture is right now. At some point, you have to stop and realize that maybe sometimes you're the problem. Maybe you are the problem. And maybe you have to find a different way to approach this sort of issue. That being said, this guy can go straight to fucking hell. He is one of the worst, most vile human beings I've ever met.
I like that.
Yosef Haddad, King Azule suggested that we fight on his boxing card. If that works,
Ooh.
I would love to catch you in a boxing ring. Legal fight. We fight each other. You're a big man. Or so you try to convince everybody with your big words. Let's settle it like gentlemen in the ring. Boxing gloves, okay? Let's do it. Let's run it back. No security guards. Anyway, all jokes aside, I am praying for all of us, okay? I'm praying for my enemies as well. It's a skill I've had to work on for most of my life. I'm a very confrontational person.
Okay, I'm going to cut this here because we have a very, very big guest waiting in the wings here. So let me get this out because this deserves an introduction. Let me, I'm terrible at this. Don't forget I'm terrible at this. There we go.